In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Marianne's guests are leaders in their field, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in their own work. They teach others to develop, refocus, and grow. Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. And remember, make every moment count.
Welcome to Moments with Marianne. Today I'm here with my very special guest, Dr. Shawne Duperon, and she's here to talk about an amazing project that she has going forward, and it's called Project Forgive. So welcome to the show, Dr. Shawne.
Thanks for having me. I'm just tickled to be here.
Oh, well, thank you. Gosh, you've got such great accolades with what you've been doing with Project Forgive. You know, and I've heard also that you were nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, which is, that's pretty astounding on its own, you know.
I know, it's like, really? Are you serious? It's crazy, fun, beautiful, like pinch me realm is where we're at. It's crazy fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's happened is what you're doing with Project Forgive, and we'll talk about this in just a minute for our listeners, but what you're doing with Project Forgive really resonated with so many people. And I can see that that's why that you were given that very that great honor, you know.
Yeah, it's we started off just doing a little video. It really was just to tell a story. I'm a producer by trade, and the story touched so many people. It moves me to even. I feel so lucky to be part of this. You know, never knew that it would go the way that it went. We're impacting millions of people now. And if someone would have told me 10 years ago that I would start a foundation, I'd say, you're crazy. I am so busy. I love what I'm doing. Life is so gorgeous and beautiful. I no interest in a nonprofit, and that's exactly what happened, like going with the flow of the beauty of life and what really deeply inspires you, you know. It's kind of cool how that works.
Well, and it's fun when we do what we're passionate about, and then it ends up where it just kind of takes us, slingshots us off into a direction we weren't expecting, you know. And so that's pretty exciting. Well, so why don't you talk to tell our listeners a little bit about Project Forgive? You know, what's that all about?
For sure. You know, it started with a tragedy is really how it got started. And a dear family friend of ours, his name is Gary Weinstein, his family was killed by a drunk driver. And it was a toughie because my children babysat his children. They were Sammy and Alex, 10 and 12 years old. And his wife, Judy, was my husband's business coach. And this family, you know how you meet families and they're just extraordinary, amazing human beings? Yeah. That was this family, just an amazing family. And it was a tough day. It was, a few years back. And what happened later in that day could never have predicted. I get a phone call that the man who killed them is also another dear family friend.
Oh, God.
And, even just saying it, even though this is not about me at all, it's just like, wow, how serendipitous, how tragic, how beautiful at the same time, knowing both these families and how amazing both families are. And finding out later that day as well that Tom Wellinger, the man who killed Sammy and Alex and Judy, was also about to have an intervention from his family. His family was flying in from another state to do an alcoholic intervention the next day. They were a day late. Tom was also on his way to get help that day without even knowing that an intervention was in the works. So it was just like, oh, my gosh. And knowing Gary, the man who lost his family, knowing what kind of an individual person, who he is as a human being, that his heart not only would ache for his own family, of course, he would also ache for the man who caused this, because he really gets the conversation that we're all human. We all make mistakes. Some of us make mistakes that are a little more public or more tragic than others, and it's this dichotomy of holding you did a horrible thing and you're also a beautiful person at the same moment, that is a difficult thing to grasp. And that's how Project Forgive got started. I'm a producer by trade. Did a little 5-minute video because the story had to be shared about how Tom and Gary met and how forgiveness was involved. And what is this conversation of forgiveness? And that's how it all started. And I've never looked back. I haven't looked back since starting that video, and Desmond Tutu endorsing us, and the millions in social media, and the start of a foundation, just breathtaking.
Yeah, well, and it would be so easy for Gary to have totally demonized, what his neighbor had done, and really not move into this place of forgiveness. I mean, the video that, and I've seen some of the interviews that he's talking with you, it's just, he's just this remarkable person to look beyond that.
Yeah, and you know what's so cool about this, Marianne, is that this conversation initiated a global conversation on what forgiveness actually is. And we've gotten to explore in so many ways because, a family member is murdered, let alone 3, because his family was murdered by a drunk driver. Mm-hmm. You're going to go through all kinds of feelings and emotions. You are going to be in shock. These are the stages of forgiveness. You're going to be in shock. You're going to be angry. You're going to feel grief, place of solution and acceptance and peace. And it is a non-linear process. You don't just all of a sudden say, oh, I'm sad. Oh, I'm happy now. Life is good. I forgive him. I'm going to be above this. Those are very precarious conversations around the conversation of forgiveness. And what's been so beautiful about this project is that we can understand and share that forgiveness is so different for everyone. And that maybe forgiveness isn't always the goal. Maybe the forgiveness is peace. This conversation of forgiving and forgetting is just baloney. That is just baloney. Ask someone whose child was murdered by a murderer, or someone who was molested by their father, which I was. I'm an incest survivor. I'm never going to forget that. But does that mean you don't forgive? Of course not. It's such a complicated construct. Forgiveness is very complicated, very precious, very beautiful, and it's an evolution of our souls. And to allow this conversation to be generated globally in such a beautiful, precious way is a gift indeed.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's so true. I mean, when we choose to forgive somebody, it's not letting them off the hook for whatever heinous behavior or what wrongs they've done. It really is giving us the peace that we deserve, so that way we can move on in life and have that peaceful life.
Oh, you're so spot. I love your energy. Do you know you feel so good talking to you? You feel so good and so peaceful. Yeah. And you're spot on. You are absolutely spot on. And, part of the thing that happened with Project Forgive is we're making a documentary. It's going to air on PBS soon. And we've explored many, many stories. And it's not a documentary about tragedy. It's a documentary about this exploration of forgiveness. And one of the gals we interview, her name is Jo Erickson. Her son was killed. And she talks about, and we really talk about this a lot, and on our Facebook page and our social media, that things don't always happen to us, that sometimes to consider that maybe they happen for us. Mm-hmm. Because it's really about the evolution of all of us and embracing our humanity, embracing our humanness, embracing that we all make mistakes, and how compassionate and loving can we be as we move through anger and grief and solution and shock. And even simple things like when you get cut off on the freeway, does your heart get going? Does it take you a half an hour to calm down? Or is that something that you can forgive right away versus being afflicted with breast cancer? Or having fibromyalgia. Oh, I'm saying it wrong. Fibromyalgia. You get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. And like being mad at God or Allah or Buddha or whatever your religious beliefs are. Mm-hmm. We do not affiliate ourselves with any religion whatsoever, nor do we we're not here to make a political statement whatsoever. We're nonpartisan, non-religious. We focus on the conversation of what brings us together, where we're the same, how we're all human, and how we deal with all these things in our own way in our lives for the short time that we're here on the planet, you know?
Well, and I would agree with you 100%. I know if our listeners, if they just take a moment and think, you know, even if they have gotten to a point in their spiritual practice or their mindfulness practice, wherever they're at in life, they can probably think of somebody that they have a lack of forgiveness for, and it could be something as simple as someone cutting them off on the freeway, or what have you, that has kind of elevated their anxiety or anger or what have you. And you know, what a great with your video and with the information you have here, what great, you know, like a great little trail that you have blazed for people to also kind of take a look at that and say, hey, you know what, I deserve to have more peace. I'm going to start forgiving, you know, and look at how I can forgive people in my life. I love what you're doing here.
Yeah.
I mean,
it really is beautiful because we have so many myths about forgiveness. We really do, and especially anger. You know, when we're filming, because the movie's almost done. It's going to be airing later this year or early, you know, in 2017. We're waiting to figure out on PBS. Yeah. And we interviewed a bunch of 4-year-olds, and they were adorable. You know, like, what is forgiveness? It's when you say a bunch of sorries, and they're just exquisite, these pure little souls. Yeah. And I also asked them about anger, because anger is a very important process of forgiveness. It's so important. And a lot of times we say, oh, I'm going to take the high road, and we don't deal with our anger, and then that sets us up to repeat our past. You probably know this as a business coach, especially in business. You keep doing the same frickin' things over and over and over till you get it, right? You know, like,
oh, for sure.
And yeah. And this anger thing, we asked these little kids, these 4-year-olds, every single one of those children, we interviewed 24 of them, said anger was bad. Every single one of them. And I'm like, wow, that is such an interesting conversation, because violence is how we usually equate anger. We've never learned properly how to be angry or how to express anger. We have it as such a precarious, bad emotion. And when you really think about it, anger is really important. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, they got really mad. They actually caused a global transformation in how we associate drinking and driving. It is now considered a pariah to drink and drive globally. It's because these mothers got mad and said, enough is enough. And anger, when used appropriately and moved through, it's the most precious part of your forgiveness process. Because usually what anger indicates, and this is what we found through research and through interviewing a lot of people, is that you haven't tapped into grief yet. Because grief, out of all the phases of forgiveness, is the hardest to be with, is grief. And grief is what changes us. Grief is what actually causes the transformation. And we sometimes get stuck in anger or avoid the anger and never really get to the grieving part. Because in the grieving part is when you soften, is when you actually feel the betrayal or feel whatever it is that you're feeling. So then you can actually move to acceptance and find a solution. And I've got an easy example. How about an easy business example? You want an easy one?
Oh, so yes. I love them.
Okay, perfect. So I'm a television producer by trade. That's what I've worked in news for a long time. And the holy grail is winning an Emmy. That is the holy frickin' grail, okay?
Oh,
is the word frick. I say frick a lot too, so sorry.
But it is.
For years.
In that world, it is, you know?
Yeah. And Emmys are the holy grail. And so I wanted to win an Emmy. I was nominated 10 times. And for those that know who Susan Lucci is and watched All My Children for years, I'm dating myself now. I'm a 52-year-old grandma. I was Susan Lucci of Emmys. She didn't win 16 times. I think she was nominated. And I was so angry. Like, what is the deal here? I'm so good at what I do. And until I allowed myself to really let myself win an Emmy and deeply feel the grief of not winning, that's when the breakthrough started to happen. That's when I started to say, okay, like a good cry even.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to win so bad. Some people would call it feeling sorry for yourself, which is just crap. That is just crap. Grief is not feeling sorry for yourself.
I agree with you 100% because especially as women in business, I mean, we set our goals, you know, and whatever that goal is, it could be an Emmy, it could be, you know, becoming getting a raise and becoming a manager or whatever the deal is. We set our goals on things, and when we don't get it, we should grieve for them, you know?
Absolutely, because in that grief is where you find the solution. Because after I got through some of the grief, I was able to say, well, wait a minute, what can I do here? How can I get out of victim and actually be a thriver here? And why don't I maybe get on a committee and look and see what Emmys actually win? What are Emmy winners?
Mm-hmm.
So I started going on committees. I started learning about the process, learning just like you hear that, you know, with the what's the big awards for movies? Oscars.
Yeah.
There's certain movies win Oscars. Certain things win. Okay. And there's different parts to this. And so after I was able to grieve a bit, then I actually came to solutions and found peace and actually got my acclaimed Emmy. And what I really want to stress and emphasize is you don't grieve and then you're done with it. Grief comes in layers, especially if you have major grief about different situations in your life. It's a layering. So even in this process of forgiveness, which Gary Weinstein has discovered, the man I mentioned in this video, like today, here it is almost 10 years later that he's lost, that his children were killed by a drunk driver. And it's graduation time. It's the hardest time for him. He feels a lot of grief at this time, you know, through the summer months and when children are graduating from high school, because he doesn't get to see his children graduate. And so there's an ebb and flow in these phases of forgiveness, and allowing them to come and go in their own timeline is what is so beautiful. It's when we sabotage by not allowing our feelings to surface. That's when we start repeating the same things that we've been doing in the past that put us in predicaments to have more harm caused to us. That's that self-sabotage that shows up. And it's really allowing those feelings to come forward is what really is the ticket.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100% on that. And because there is no timeline on this is the grieving process, now you're done, you know, move on. You know, everyone grieves in their own way, but it's nice to be able to know that it does happen in layers and that, you know, you might be having a really good day and other days might not be so good, and it's okay. That's just part of the journey. You know?
It sure is. You know what's so beautiful about what you're saying is, and I would assert that you would agree with us, just even knowing you and seeing some of the other things that you've done, Marianne, you don't have to do this alone. That's why a coach, mentor, mastermind is so important. I have 3 coaches myself. I have a codependency coach. I have a money coach. I have a business coach. And with you as a coach, this is something, because sometimes it's hidden, you know, when we're in the midst of it and we're not noticing, you know, it's like our blind spots about ourselves. And so when we really want to thrive and do really well and really make a difference, this is a shameless plug for you as a coach. Because I can already tell intuitively. Yeah. I can tell intuitively you already do that. I can already tell you do that. And whoever is working with you is deeply blessed because you can see the things they cannot. And we all need that in our lives. We need that dearly. And especially if you're playing a big game in leadership in your life. Oh my goodness, I'd never be able to do the things I'm doing without all the people around me to help me get out of my own way and get out of my own. My husband calls it my gosh, I'm getting old. I can't remember words. How sad is that? Neuroses. He'll say you're in your neuroses. And I'm no longer offended by that. I'm like, I think I am in some crazy thinking here, you know, like a mad scientist.
I think we all kind of put on our mad scientist hat on, though, you know, because I totally get it. And thank you. I mean, coming from you, that's just a great honor. You know, for your kind words, and I really deeply appreciate that. You know, and I strongly believe in having coaches, and you know, I have one that I work with myself, and she works with me on a business spiritual level, and I think it's real important to always have have a coach. And, I've had coaches that we plateau with. You get to a point,
Yep.
it's like, okay, gotten everything I need to get from this person, and you look for the next good coach. One of the things I have always thought that, and I believe you've offered this once before in the past because I've seen it, and, I know what an amazing job you do, is you do a media mastery boot camp as well. And for any of our folks thinking about, taking things to the next level, I would highly suggest taking your boot camp.
Boot camp is just a blast. It is so fun. And I love how you're saying this, too, because I'm very roundabout, very similar to you. Mm-hmm. This conversation of forgiveness in business is the most critical to me, and that's one of the reasons why I was so drawn to this conversation of forgiveness because, gosh, I've been a corporate trainer and communication trainer for years, and always bringing in this conversation of forgiveness in business, particularly for you as a leader who takes risks. And I love this conversation of dancing in love and fear. And actually it was I do a lot of Facebook Live, which is it's phenomenal what's going on Facebook. And last night our topic, one of our topics was on this conversation of love and fear. And you hear that a lot in a lot of different realms. And I have a very different take on it. And I'm not talking about romantic love. I'm talking about love in business where you're juiced, you're on track, your team is so excited, and you're just going back and forth with ideas. There's no shame. Even if you share an idea that's totally ridiculous, your teammate goes, oh, my gosh, that's so way out there. I don't know if we should quite go that far, but I love the creativity that's being created in this meeting. The same thing like you love Costco. Like I'm a huge Costco fan. I love Costco. Love my iPhone. There's certain things. There's probably certain Facebook pages that you love, and it's so beautiful when that's going on. And then on the flip side of that love space is fear. That's when you're procrastinating. Procrastination to me is fear because there's many reasons why we procrastinate. I see being annoyed as a type of fear because if I'm annoyed with someone, like maybe you're at a networking event and the person that comes up to you is like the most boring person in the world and you're like, shoot me in the frickin' head. I do not want to talk to this person. Have you ever experienced that, right? And then I'm annoyed.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think, wait a minute, Shawne, you're in annoyed space. You're in fear mode. When you're in fear mode, there's no connection that can happen. And so then I can quickly shift on a dime into compassion and actually open up with this person and get out of my annoyed, feared place. Anger is a type of fear. Inappropriate humor is a type of fear. All those things are fear. And usually what you would think when you juxtapose those together like a versus, like love versus fear, you would think love is good and fear is bad. And I don't think that way. I love this conversation of new perceptions. I really like the conversation of love and fear. Because when you're in business, especially as a woman taking risks in leadership, whether you have your own business or you're aspiring to get into a more promoted area as a leader in your company, you're going to take risks and you're going to step into fear deliberately. You are going to step into fear. And the game is to stretch outside that comfort zone and go to fear so you can learn the new skills. It makes sense, right?
Oh, totally, and I agree with that 100% because everything happens, and there's people talking about this all the time. This isn't anything new, but everything happens outside the comfort zone because it's easy to stay where things are, I can control this, and I feel safe doing this stuff. But once you get beyond that, it's like uncharted territory, and anything can happen. And a lot of times people get stuck in the fear mode where they think, everything bad is going to happen. But I look at it and it's like, I get excited. I'm like, okay, what great thing can happen next? Let's go.
Exactly. And when you do take those risks and you feel like crap, because sometimes when you take risks, things are going to go crappy. It's just the game. And
bad hair
and the
day,
bridge,
that'll do it.
Yeah. And the bridge between the two to go with this love and fear context, the bridge in between is forgiveness. Can you forgive yourself for not doing it perfect? Can you have compassion for yourself for your amazing courage to even do it to begin with? And when you can bridge that forgiveness, that's when the flow between love and fear really starts to move, and you really start to do amazing things. Was I terrified with Project Forgive? Most days I still am. Holy smoly. It gets bigger and bigger every time, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing from one day to the next. It's like, okay, let's try that. We're getting ready to launch a movie, for goodness sakes. I want to do it different in marketing. Marketing's my expertise. Gossip is my academic fixture, and how do you make things go viral? I'm going to be trying some new things. Some of them are going to work beautifully. Some of them are going to be a bust. And because I have that bridge, that internal bridge of being able to stop, grieve my losses, admire my own internal courage, have compassion with myself. And this is something you becomes a habit that you master. It doesn't just happen to you. You work on this like with a coach or with a mastermind or with your colleagues. You cannot do this alone. You can't do it alone. And that's when the miracles start to happen.
I agree with you 100%. You know, and all the fun, to me, all the fun happens outside of that zone. And you're so right. I mean, you know, there have been things that I've tried and it's like, well, that was a bust. That didn't work. That didn't work at all. You know, but you know, you take notes and you readjust. You know, you look at it. It's like, okay, well, that didn't work. Well, what if we changed it a little bit this way, or did it totally different? Did it this way? You know, it's you know, that's where innovation comes from, and in being able to look at something and really, you know, bring out a perspective that no one else has thought of because of taking that risk and saying, okay, well, you know, let's do some risky thinking here. How can we do this?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well,
you're so spot on. Totally agree with you too.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, there's a reason I've been loving all the, you know, you put out this just amazing stuff. I've been following you for, gosh, it's been a few years now, you know, and I just love watching it, just how it's taken this beautiful unfolding. It's just been absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, one of the questions I had, so I know you talk about, you've discussed about, you know, forgiveness, you know, how important forgiveness is in a company setting. Where does responsibility play a part in that?
Yeah, you know, that's a beautiful question. And you know, ultimately, and we know this. This is such a cliche. We are only responsible for ourselves, right?
Oh yeah.
And I love to use this technique. This is a technique that we use in the Project Forgive Foundation because we're a leadership foundation. We really focus on like integrity, collaboration, diversity, and forgiveness and compassion in the workplace. And because it's really hard to work with someone who got the promotion that you really, really wanted, and you think you like hate her. Okay, it's like it's not fair to be on a team with this person, right? Or the client that you thought was amazing, you get this $20,000 contract, and it's actually a penny a minute because they're so frickin' high maintenance, right? And
I had those.
Me too. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so, what do you do with that? How do you claim ownership and responsibility? And I love to talk about the notion that we're our own TV station. We're always giving off some kind of signal. We're our own TV station, our own radio station. We're always giving off a signal. And a great example for me is in this notion of accepting the apology you'll never receive. This is a technique that we use a lot in Project Forgive.
That sounds like an amazing technique to use. Where can our listeners learn more about that?
Our new website is launching or launched, and it's projectforgive.com. Come hang out with us. And, of course, come with us on Facebook. Our community on Facebook is so beautiful. We do a lot of live broadcasts that are sponsored by very, very generous corporations, and all the services we provide are free because of our sponsors and our donors and our philanthropists. So come check us out and just come say hi. I'll make sure that you say that you heard me on this show, and I'll be sure to say, "Oh, yay! I loved Marianne."
Well, the feeling is mutual. Let me tell you.
Yay!
I really, really love and appreciate everything that you're doing, and Project Forgive, I think, is just an amazing, amazing piece of work. So, and we're definitely going to be following you and seeing how things are going. So thank you so much, Dr. Shawne, for being on the show today. We so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. You are a delightful human.
Oh, you are too.
I feel blessed just even knowing you. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And for our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We're going to be right back after this quick break. We'll be right back.
In 2012, after returning home from Iraq and Afghanistan, Shawne Duperon hiked over 2,000 miles of the Appalachian Trail. Recognizing the therapeutic effects of long-distance hiking, Shawne founded Warrior Expeditions, a veteran nonprofit therapy program that supports veterans transitioning from their military service by hiking America's national scenic trails. Equipment and supplies are provided, as well as assistance with job placement. For more info or to help support these veterans, visit warriorexpeditions.org.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
During times of uncertainty, challenges, and change, how do we find a ray of hope to move forward? In Amy Van Atta Slater's best-selling book, Moments, Magic, Miracles, and Martinis, she offers a torch of inspiration, motivation, mindfulness, and authenticity that illuminates even the most desperate of situations with possibility. Order your copy today to see what the buzz is all about at www.amyvslater.com.
Ben Wexler is a gifted leadership development and strategy consultant for professionals who want to transform their organizations and careers. Through a uniquely personalized set of processes, participants discover their unique knowledge, how to leverage that knowledge and experience, and then put it all together with a global strategy. You're more valuable, your organization is more valuable, and the change is viral. Contact Ben at 630-881-1074. 630-881-1074.
Discover the book publisher's weekly calls compelling. Piper, Once and Again, is the breathtaking debut novel by psychic medium Caroline E. Zani. Death has no power over love. Piper, Once and Again, is a story of hope for the hopeless and faith amidst tragedy. Follow Piper on a journey of loss and redemption as she tries to find the one man who can help her figure out why she must be. Piper, Once and Again. www.carolinezani.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here with Jeanne Segal.
She's the author of Feeling Loved, The Science of Nurturing Meaningful Connections and Building Lasting Happiness. So welcome to the show, Jeanne.
Thank you, Marianne.
No, well, thank you. Well, you know, your book, I know you are very passionate about helping people who maybe are feeling disconnected or unhappy with life. And I've read quite a bit of, you know, not just with your book, but on your website also, helpguide.org. And I wanted to hear, you know, if you could explain to our listeners a little bit about your story. What really has made you so passionate about this, about writing this book?
Well, I've been passionate about the importance of social connections vis-a-vis emotional connections, I think, for probably 35 years. I've been practicing for close to 40 years. So a lifetime of experience that really began working with cancer patients whose profiles suggested that survival connected to how we connect to our emotions. So that, I mean, this was before we knew anything about the brain and so on. And, you know, this was in the 70s. But you started to see through practice, you know, this again, there wasn't a lot of science at that time. There's a great deal of science now to support this connection. But at that time, it was mostly observation, and we were doing research and comparing all survivors. They don't even use that term anymore. At that time, these were UCLA patients who were alive after 5 years with a life expectancy of from 3 to 18 months. And we found real evidence to show that those people who could do that somehow related to themselves and others in a particular way. And it was up to us to try to figure out what that was and how to help the rest of us do that.
Well, and your research, I was really impressed with it because it really shows, how people need that connection, need that love connection, and to feel love. It's not just, something that used to be like a woo-woo kind of thought. It's, it's actually, it's a scientific fact that, people need to feel connected and feel loved.
Right, but the brain has a particular way of experiencing this connection. And one of the things I try to point out in the book is that there really is a difference between being told we're loved, because most of us have been told at one time or another that we are loved. And maybe we even believe it, but we don't experience it. We don't have an experience that makes us feel safe and good and puts our stress back on track. And and it lasts. That's more than a second or two. If we have a real feeling loved experience, it sticks. It stays with us for some time. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that lasting connection.
That's right. Right. That sense of well-being that comes, the sense of well-being that comes from not just being told you're loved, but feeling that experience, having an experience that leaves you feeling safe and clear-headed and, just good, and that sticks with you for a time. That's an experience that our nervous system craves. That is actually nature's way of, it's nature's response to stress is what it really is. I mean, that's the way I look at it. It's the quickest, most dependable, deepest way to reduce stress that there is.
Now, and you actually talk about that in your book, the connection with stress and, just how that affects, just the whole, someone's whole sense of being, because, you get all stressed out,
Right, Marianne. It really starts at intimacy, and you and I'm sure a lot of listeners have heard about something called secure attachment. That's that's been around for a little while, and that feeling when a caretaker is able to help create that feeling in an infant, what happens is the infant's brain becomes very cohesive. That really is how our brains become cohesive. When we have that experience, that's the effect. And that cohesiveness, that sense of that kind of good, it feels good. Your nervous system is balanced and on track. That's the experience of feeling love, and it's extremely powerful. It starts in infancy, if we're lucky enough. Not everybody gets it, but it's something we can learn. And it's that experience that is, as I said, nature's antidote to stress, as well as just this wonderful feeling that helps us be resilient and helps us feel good and get through, all of the challenges. I mean, being a human being, you're just challenged all the time,
It's part of the journey.
It's very much.
Yeah.
Very visible. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I know you also talk about the in-person connection versus virtual connection. Can you explain the difference between that for our listeners and why one's probably, why they're different and, which one would be better?
Okay. It's not, obviously or intuitively obvious what the difference is. But the brain, believe me, your brain knows the difference. Your brain does not perceive the face on a screen the way it perceives a human face in 3D. When we're face-to-face with someone, the brain picks up all of the messages of the muscles in the face, as well as the posture, the neck, the way you're holding your head, things like that. But there are almost as many muscles in the face as the rest of the body put together. One of the questions when I was going to school in the 50s was, how come? What do we need all these muscles in the face for? None of them are weight-bearing, unlike the other muscles in the body. Why do we have all these muscles? Well, turns out, at least it appears, that we have them because even though, if you and I were talking face-to-face, we wouldn't be noticing, her cheek is doing this, and the little muscle in her mouth is doing that, and the other one around her, whatever, her chin is doing something else. Nevertheless, the brain is picking that up. And what the brain is picking up in all of that subtlety, as well as the tone of our voice and things like that, is a sense of safety. And a sense of, this is a person who's congruent. What the words go with the expressions. And I feel safe, and I feel comfortable, and I feel trusted, and I feel good. That you can only get from a face-to-face connection. You cannot get that on a screen. It's just the brain just isn't prepared, hasn't evolved. Maybe it will at some point, but right now we're not evolved enough. The brain doesn't see and respond to the face and the sounds on a screen that it does to a real in-person face.
Yeah. Well, and I've often heard, people describe, like when they go on dating sites and they, quote, meet people, it's really kind of not the real world, because then the imagination starts taking over. And, and regardless, how we meet people in a virtual sense, the dating site's just an example, but it's like that, it's that disconnect,
But, and you feel it. It's like in one of the ways you can tell is that the good feeling is so fleeting. It doesn't stay with you. If you really have a true connection, that stays with you. You might be feeling a little sad or even depressed or anxious or worried or whatever. You have a face-to-face connection, and this connection takes place in the moment. In order to receive this information, in order for the brain to accept this information, to suck it up, we have to be in the moment. We have to be in the moment. We're somewhat aware of our own feelings. And there's this connection that takes place. And when an emotional connection takes place or exchange, and it's been a positive one, you feel like this person has positive regard for you, cares about you, has an interest in you, you go away and you feel just so much better, and you feel happier. And those good feelings don't disappear. They stay with you for a bit. And so that's the power of this kind of connection. Now, it does require us to receive it. I mean, if we're thinking about something else in the past or the future in our heads, we're not going to notice. We're not going to notice those muscular responses in the face. We're not going to notice the subtlety, the warmth in the voice. We'll just miss out on it.
Yeah, it's a missed opportunity there,
Yes. And it's so many of us, we're in such a rush. There are actually little opportunities throughout the day. We all have these little opportunities. Am I doing that noise? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure where that's coming from. It's okay because oh no, don't worry. The producer can cut that out, so that's not a problem. So we'll just pick right back up. And then and real quick, the speaker that you're using, is that close to your mouth?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Sometimes it might be the.
Okay, I'll try it this way. Maybe this is better. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we're good. Okay, sorry.
So when we have a real face-to-face connection that involves some sort of positive emotional exchange, we not only take pleasure in that moment, but we take the pleasure with us. It stays with us. It helps us, as I said, it reduces our stress, keeps it online, keeps us more even, and more resilient, so that the rest of the day, other things are colored by this good experience that has happened because we have felt this connection to someone.
That is such an important piece, is
it's huge.
And how this all comes together, feeling connected, which, and feeling loved, which, for the most part, I mean, we all go through our challenges and trials, but for the most part would make somebody kind of a happier person to be around,
Absolutely. And it not only makes us happier, the number one predictor of how we are going to be in terms of our physical health is our mental health. I mean, if we're having physical health problems, it would be a good idea, and we also knew we were having emotional and mental health problems, learning to have these kinds of experiences not only impact your mental health, they greatly impact your physical health as well, because they reduce stress. And when stress is reduced and you're in your comfort zone, you're not overwhelmed by stress, your body's natural ability to take charge, to repair, is fully on. When we're stressed, when we're overstressed, this repair response from the immune system is diminished. So feeling loved is not only good for our mental health, it's equally good for our physical health.
Oh, definitely. Now, I know that you have a big chapter in the book where you talk about this, but I wanted you to explain to our listeners, what worry does to the brain,
Well, what worry does is it takes our response to stress offline. I mean, normally, we were saying earlier, we're very vulnerable creatures, human beings. We were never meant to survive alone by ourselves. So we have these highly social brains that are set up to kind of manage stress vis-a-vis our connections to other people. And when we have these connections, when we pay attention to them and when we make it a point, when we make the effort to have these connections and take time for them, it makes all the difference in the world in terms of how we're doing. It colors all of our experience.
Well, and I'd have to agree with you in how, because we do live in a society where everything is so fast and everything's so fast-paced, instant, connections with people, click this button,
Right, and worry comes in because what happens when we worry, Marianne, is that we're in our heads thinking. Usually what we're worrying about isn't that here's a saber-toothed tiger going to bite us, right? Or even if God forbid, we're in a near traffic accident miss. You're not worrying about it. It's just a reaction. So worry is usually about, almost always about something that passed, that happened, that's past, or it's a worry about what if, what's going to come, what's going to happen, which means you're thinking. You're in your frontal cortex thinking, and usually with great intensity. A lot of energy is there. Now, that process easily becomes stressful. Mm-hmm. But even more important, what it does is it takes you out of the moment. You no longer are present in the moment. And when you're not present in the moment, you can't pick up the signals from other people that could make you feel a lot more relaxed. So you stay sort of, in this constant state of agitation, unavailable to nature's antidote to stress, which is this connection to other people, and you miss out on it, and there you go. You kind of stay stressed, and that's the real problem with worry. It's not a particularly pleasant place to be, but because you're also stressed and off track because you're so busy worrying, again, your immune system is compromised in these kinds of processes. Our relationships get compromised because we're not really there with people. Our ability to truly work well and solve problems is compromised because we're not, we're someplace else. We're ahead of ourselves or behind ourselves.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, because it is either, kind of looking in the rearview mirror or, creating things that haven't yet happened,
Mm-hmm.
And kind of going that way, and I've had people come up to me in the past tell me, I'm an introvert. It's really hard for me to meet people, make connections. And, what I really liked about your book is, it's for everybody. They can pick this up regardless if they're good at meeting people or not, but it's just about, their connection, not just with other people, but with themselves,
Yes.
And
right. I'm a bit introvert. I really, this has nothing to do with whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. A lot of writers, like myself, are introverts. I mean, what all an introvert is somebody who doesn't mind spending, a reasonable amount of time by themselves. That's what introvert means. It doesn't mean you're not social. It doesn't mean you don't like, or more important, don't need other people. Introverts need that connection as much as extroverts do. And there isn't a reason in the world why we can't have it. It's got nothing to do with introvert or extrovert. It has to do with our ability to know what we're looking for and to be open to receiving this kind of connection. I started to say earlier, you can have it with a number of people. It isn't a connection that solely has to be with an intimate or a very good friend. I mean, you can walk, do your chores, go to this store, this counter, that counter, and when you're open to it, you can meet people who look back at you with openness and regard and a smile and a sense of caring that really makes you feel good. We've all had waiters who make us feel good, or servers that make us feel good. It's something that people who feel good and who have connection to others, their faces, they will give that, they offer that sign in just a few moments. This doesn't last a long time, but it's long enough to make us feel good.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And those connections are, for me, those are some of the most delicious parts of the day.
They are,
because you can really make an honest connection with somebody, and and really be able to give. You be authentic in the moment and really be able to give, which is a nice thing, not just buzzwords.
No, and you're making a good point, Marianne, because when we give this way, when we see somebody that interests us, that we have regard for, and we're present with them in the moment. We're not thinking about something else. We're really looking at them and letting them see into our regard. We're giving them an enormous gift, and that feels good too.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a win-win on that one.
Exactly. That's right. You're right.
Yeah. So, if you have somebody that is what would you say to someone who's like stuffing his or her emotions,
Well, we have a whole toolkit on the website for that.
I was hoping you'd bring that up.
Yes. If you, I said earlier we were talking about what it was like when we were infants. If we grew up in a situation, doesn't necessarily mean we weren't loved or had a bad caretaker necessarily or anything like that, but somehow mom or whoever it was who raised us didn't really emotionally connect to us. They were depressed, or they were overworked, or there could be many different causes. Not to blame, but it just didn't happen. Okay, and so we don't look for that. We don't know how to look for it. But look, if a tiny baby can learn this, believe me, you can too. It's a question of learning learning to look for those connections, learning to connect to our own feelings. If we don't know what we feel, if we pushed our own feelings away because they didn't seem useful and weren't regarded when we were younger, we're not going to be able to make the kinds of connection that I'm talking about. And so the first step is learning how to get comfortable with all your own feelings. And I say in the book, and I've said for many years, and it really is true, emotion is just a message. It's the nervous system. You're getting a message from your brain. I feel this, I feel that, whatever. What you do with it is independent of the message itself. Just because you get a message that tells you you're angry doesn't mean you have to do this or that about it. It's just a message, a piece of information that helps you decide what it is you want in the moment and what's useful to you or not useful to you. So that ability to pick up this information really is dependent on learning a couple of skills. One of them is how to use your senses to very quickly reduce stress. And then another of the skills is really a skill of mindfulness, but not just mindfulness with the door closed and I'm nice and safe in my own private little space, but the kind of mindful presence of mind where you're in the moment and you can go out into the world and live holding on to this mindfulness, this sense of being in the moment and being comfortable with your emotions, not always liking them, but not ever becoming overwhelmed by them, so that you have access, when you're mindful, to all this emotional information that helps you connect to other people as well as to yourself.
And that's, I think, is so important for people to hear. A lot of times when people, if they're new to a mindfulness practice or meditation or what have you, when you talk about mindfulness, they think, oh, I've got to sit, meditate or, be like a Buddhist monk, and it makes it much more complicated, and it doesn't really even get to what mindfulness is really about, like how you're saying, being present in the moment and present with those that are around you. So you really actually get to enjoy life as opposed to, spending time, like an example, like having coffee with somebody and then thinking about all the things you have to do for work.
Right, which means you can't have any, there's no real joy and satisfaction in it.
I agree with you completely on that. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We so greatly appreciate it.
Our listeners can visit your website, which is helpguide.org. You'll also be able to click on the link to Jeanne Segal's website at the bottom of this recording. And so thank you again, Jeanne, for being on the show today. What a joy it's been to have you on. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. My goodness,
Thank you, Marianne. It's been a pleasure for me, too. Thank you.
Okay. And for all of our listeners, I'd like to thank you for tuning in today. And remember, make every moment count.
Join us next time for Moments with Marianne, when host Marianne Pestana brings another inspirational gifted leader to help us grow. Tune in every second Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Moments with Marianne, when the Dream Vision 7 radio network is at 1510 a.m. Boston. Or catch Moments with Marianne every Thursday and Friday at 5 p.m. and 5 a.m. Eastern Time by going to dreamvision7radio.com. To learn how Marianne started her business from the ground up, visit mariannepestana.com. Don't miss this, and remember, make every moment count.